There's something eerie about places like this. You stand here on an ordinary looking bit of coast at Helens Bay, the water lying calm enough, and then you read the sign and you realise this was never just a viewpoint. This was Grey Point Fort. Built between 1904 and 1907, this place was part of the shield around Belfast, a coastal battery meant to stop enemy ships forcing their way toward one of the most important industrial ports in these islands. Back then, Belfast wasn't just a city, it was a target. Shipbuilding, engineering, trade, war production, all of that made this stretch of water worth defending. And that's the thing I love about sites like this. From the outside, it looks quiet, but under your feet is a whole system of magazines, shelters, command posts, cables, drills, orders, fear, and waiting. A place designed for the moment somebody out there on the water made the wrong move. As you come up the ramp, you can feel the layout starting to make sense. This was not built to look dramatic, it was built to work. Everything here served the guns, the paths, the storage, the shelters, the observation points, the ammunition spaces. All of it revolved around getting those great 6-inch pieces into action as fast and as safely as possible. Grey Point's job was simple in theory but deadly serious in practice. Control the entrance to Belfast, identify shipping, challenge it, and if necessary, open fire. By the First World War, Grey Point had become more than just a pair of gun pits on a headland. By 1916, the battery command post here was overseeing activity not only at Grey Point, but also at Kilroot, Orlock Point, East Twin Island, and the Carrickfergus Garrison Artillery. That tells you this wasn't some isolated wee outpost. This was a working node in a bigger defensive network. And here's where the real scale of it starts to hit you. At the heart of the fort were two 6-inch breech-loading guns, each around 23 feet long, built to dominate the water below. In service terms, these were serious weapons. A standard 6-inch gun of this family could fire a shell of about 100 pounds, with a muzzle velocity around 2,500 feet per second, and depending on mounting and charge, a maximum reach of roughly 14,000 yards or more, though local heritage material tied specifically to Grey Point often describes them as throwing those shells for about 6 miles, which would fit practical coastal defence use here. Now the important bit, how did they work? These were breech loaders, which means they were loaded from the back, not the muzzle. The crew would run the gun into loading position, open the breech, load the shell, then load the propellant charge behind it. The breech mechanism closed and sealed the chamber. The layer set direction and elevation, and once fired, the recoil system absorbed the shock, so the gun didn't simply smash itself apart and could be brought back on target again. A typical 6-inch crew was around 9 men, and every man had a job: loader, trainer, layer, breech worker, ammunition numbers, and command. So when people look at these and just see big old gun, they miss the truth of it. This was machinery, yes, but it was also choreography. Drill, timing, muscle memory. If you got sloppy here, men died. Once you step inside, the fort changes character completely. Outside it's all sea air and concrete. Inside it becomes human. This is where the war stops being abstract and starts turning into routine. Orders shouted down corridors, boots on concrete, damp uniforms drying out, telephones ringing, ammunition movements, watches through the night. During the First World War, mobilization forced a real expansion here. Land to the southwest of the fort was developed with hutting and camp buildings, including barrack huts, a sergeant's mess, canteen, cookhouse, dining area, guardhouse, offices, ablutions and stores. The documented accommodation was for 6 officers and 172 other ranks of the Royal Garrison Artillery. So when people ask how many men were stationed here, that is the clearest solid number I could verify for the wartime camp arrangement around Grey Point. In terms of who ran the place, the fort was first worked by the Antrim Royal Garrison Artillery Special Reserve up to 1937, then by 188 Antrim Coastal Battery, and in the Second World War it was associated with the 525th Antrim Coast Regiment, Royal Artillery, with Grey Point later serving as an HQ and naval station role after being downgraded in August 1943. I couldn't verify one single named commander covering the site in a way I'd trust for narration, so I'd rather be straight with you than make one up. And these details in here matter, because forts like this were never just about the gun itself. They were about the system that made the gun usable. Look at the electrical gear, the switchboards, the communications fittings. All of that tells the story of a modern fortification, not some Victorian relic frozen in time. Searchlights were added in the interwar years, with major searchlight works recorded in 1936, and later wartime changes included reinforced protection, extra anti-aircraft defence, and eventually even a mobile radar set installed in 1954. That means Grey Point stayed relevant for far longer than many people would assume. This is what often gets lost with military history. The battlefield isn't only the bang, it's the cable, the signal, the sighting report, the lamp, the switch, the order passed from one room to another. Miss one link in that chain, and the gun might as well not exist. And then you get a moment like this. The kids are trying on the uniforms, lifting the kit, playing the part for a minute. And that's actually one of the strongest moments in the whole visit, because it collapses the distance between history and people. 100 years ago, lads not much more than boys were training at places like this before being sent into very real war. One local man we can actually name is Lance Bombardier John Jack McFeeters. He joined the Antrim Artillery during the First World War and trained at Grey Point Fort before going on to active service in France, including fighting around Ypres, Arras and Cambrai. He survived, but his story is a reminder that this fort was part of the opening chapter of thousands of lives that went far beyond Helens Bay. So seeing children in the uniforms here now, it's light on the surface, but underneath it there's a real emotional charge, because the uniform itself is harmless. What it represents is not. You can almost feel the rhythm of the place. Men gathered round, chores being done, routines repeated, the boring bits and the tense bits all mixed together. That's the truth of most military history. Not constant glory, not constant combat, mostly waiting, maintaining, watching, preparing. Then maybe one sudden moment where everything matters. Grey Point Fort was active in both world wars. It became fully operational again on August 24th, 1939, as Europe slid back toward conflict. In wartime, it gained extra protective concrete over the gun positions, and even though coastal artillery was of limited use during the 1941 German air raids on Belfast, the fort still formed part of the defended system. Gunners here also spotted enemy activity, including a Focke-Wulf Condor incident in 1940 after a mine-laying raid in Belfast. As for the end of the fort's military life, Grey Point ceased operating as a coastal defence battery in February 1956, after coast artillery was abolished and the original guns were removed. The two 6-inch guns you see on site now are Restoration-era replacements brought from Cork fortifications in the 1990s. So what you're looking at today is both authentic place and careful resurrection. Not a dead ruin, but a recovered one. And that, for me, is what makes the opening minutes here work so well. You arrive thinking you're just visiting an old fort on a lovely bit of coast, and within minutes, you realise you're standing inside a machine built to decide who is allowed into Belfast and who is not. And maybe that's the strangest thing about Grey Point Fort. It was built for violence, but today what stays with you is the silence.